What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Chris Pennell here. We're breaking down this absolute mess of a Week 18 slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. Last week of the season, you guys know how it can be. But if you do enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. And I do want to mention the teams that actually have something to play for this weekend. So going to the NFC, hopefully this isn't too long-winded, but just want to get this information out there for those of you that have absolutely no idea. So teams playing to win over in the NFC, we have the Atlanta Falcons, Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, which that game only pertains to the FanDuel main slate. And if you are on FanDuel, obviously there's a lot of interest there, but this video is kind of more centered towards DraftKings, so that's why they're not listed on here. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, teams that could use a win, Green Bay and Washington, and then everybody else pretty much has nothing to play for. And then heading over to the AFC side of things, a lot of the teams that actually have something to play for are playing on Saturday with the Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, and Pittsburgh Steelers. So that pretty much leaves us with three teams. The Denver Broncos going up against KC, who have nothing to play for. The Miami Dolphins against the Jets. And then the Los Angeles Chargers facing off versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Pretty much everybody else is kind of useless this week. Now, some teams are still going to play, but teams like Buffalo, they'll be resting their starters for the most part. We'll see what happens with Houston, but it's definitely something to keep in mind when building lineups this week. So let's look at the QB pool here, and I would say it's a decent amount, but for cash games specifically, I think Josh Dobbs is going to be the player that most people are targeting. Obviously, San Francisco, they're out of the playoffs. They don't have anything to play for. We'll see what the playing time is like for some of these skill position players. But either way, Josh Dobbs at $4,000, he's projecting for roughly around 14, 16 points at a bare minimum price point and an offense, a good scheme, at least with a good coach. I would have a hard time seeing him not hit value on this slate. If you don't want to go with Josh Dobbs and you have the money to spend elsewhere, Baker Mayfield is pretty much my top option. I realize they are 14-point favorites versus New Orleans, but they're playing at home, nearly 30-point implied team total this week. Him, Jaden Daniels, all fine options if you're not going the Josh Dobbs route. But that's enough about cash games. Let's talk about these stacks for tournaments. And if you guys ever do want access to the entire NFL model with the projections, optimizer, ownership projections, cheat sheets, going over cash games, tournaments, and all that good stuff. We also have NASCAR coming very soon, $1 million. Two first, can't wait for that. Link is down in the description or the pinned comment for that. And we'll be covering the NFL playoffs, every single either showdown slate or two-game slate, whatever we happen to get. But let's look at the scatter plot here because I love trying to visualize what this slate looks like, at least just on paper. And once again, just like last week, we do have an extreme outlier team all the way in the top right, and that would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think it's for a very obvious reason. So if this is your first time here, if we're looking at this chart, north-south, we're looking at projected DraftKings ownership, which keep in mind, when east-west is the implied team total this week. But keep in mind, the depth charts that I have currently right now on Friday, I got to project these out because I had to get a video out, but I just don't know what a lot of these teams are still going to do. So a lot can change. I mean, a lot by Sunday, and a lot of this is just a lot of guesswork too. I mean, I don't know what teams are throwing out there. So a lot of it is guesstimation, and I would say this is a lot more accurate in other weeks. So this one might not be the best work out there, but this is what we have to work with currently. So obviously, if you're in this top right quadrant, you're going to be having a high implied team total. You're going to have high projected ownership, which makes sense. The teams that have the higher implied team totals tend to be a bit higher owned. Tampa Bay, I mean, they have the highest implied team total in the slate. The Bucs need to win. They're playing the Saints. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Bucky Irving. Everybody's like, give me some of that, which I totally understand. And the Atlanta Falcons, also one of the highest implied team totals in the slate. They also have to win, although they're more dependent on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing, which I don't think is going to happen. But they still, a lot of good pieces in that game. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, John Mooney. If you want to go with Michael Penix, you can do that. Kyle Pitts, lots of great options. Love both of those teams, but they are going to be pretty high owned. Arizona will have their chalky pieces as well, and Michael Carter, Trey McBride at tight end, just because he's one of those standouts. Finally got into the end zone, then decided he never wanted to catch another touchdown again. Let the ball go right towards his face mask, bounce right off that. Other than that, we kind of have a cluster right here with Seattle, who is out of the playoffs, but Geno Smith does have an incentive, although it's like only 186 yards. But either way, it's a good matchup versus Rams backups. Indianapolis Colts, this is assuming that Joe Flacco is going to be in this week. I do like the stacks there once again. Washington also playing to get a win here. They're perfectly fine. Denver playing to get in. So it makes sense that they're these kind of teams that are all playing for something and are going to be in this upper right quadrant. Los Angeles Chargers, they're not mailing it in this week. They're a team that shouldn't have too much ownership, and they're at least on the right side here. Like if you're south of the border but still on the right, that means you're not looking too bad in tournaments. The Green Bay Packers, I know they're going to kind of halfway rest Josh Jacobs. That's a bit of a weird situation this week. We'll see what ends up happening, but I mean, obviously, yeah, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, that is going to be your chalk this week. And then instead of comparing this to implied team total, we're doing it to the quarterback, receiver, tight end projections this week. It's going to be a lot of overlap here, but Atlanta goes from all the way to the right, and they come in closer to the middle as far as their at least stack projection. Tampa Bay is still in the top right. Arizona is still in a comfortable range right there. Denver, Seattle, Washington kind of clumped there together once again. Then LAC and Green Bay kind of shifted a little bit more to the right. And then we just have a whole bunch of teams over on the left, which it's not saying you can't play individual players from those teams. It's just saying overall, their overall stack doesn't look extremely exciting, but there's still good players from teams that I don't mind. Like for Indianapolis, just because they're on the wrong side doesn't mean I'm not going to have interest in guys like Michael Pittman, Josh Downs this week, and just their overall projections a little bit lower. And then as you can see, normal teams that are usually on the right in KC and Buffalo, but them resting starters, I mean, they're just way down in the dumps this week because it's really hard to project those teams out because I just don't know what they're going to do. All right, head over to our build here. As I always say, the purpose of this is for me not to just hand out a lineup. I am simply just grabbing a quarterback from our pool, and then we just extrapolate on that and build a stack from it, typically a two-man stack with a run back option if I feel like it. So we have lots of quarterbacks to pick from. Baker Mayfield going to be one of the more popular options up top this week. I do think Bo Nix sounds kind of fun. Obviously, the Denver Broncos do have something to play for. They're playing at home. KC will be resting their starters. As you can see here, Patrick Mahomes is doubtful. So let's go with the Bo Nix stack. Obviously, if you want to go Josh Dobbs and just load up on skill position players, you can do that. And I would probably recommend that for cash. But let's roll with Nix here and move on to running back. And not an overly extravagant list this week just because a lot of moving pieces currently. And as you can see, we have a lot of names here that aren't normally here, like Will Shipley. I didn't put kind of Gainwell on here just because I thought Will Shipley might get the majority of the work here, but that's still, I'm not sure yet. Michael Carter will be the chalk of the week. We have Blake Corum with the Rams resting starters. Zach Charbonnet with no Kenneth Walker. Like, it's pretty ugly down low, but these kind of cheap pieces do make a lot of things work this week. But if we are talking just cash game specifically, Michael Carter with no James Conner, no Trey Benson, he'll get the majority of the work. He's going to catch some passes. I mean, he is the chalk of the week. He's my by far highest point per dollar running back on the slate. I also think Bucky Irving going to get a ton of work here. He's playing at home. He's a 14-point favorite, 30-point implied team total. He's just really good at football. He has good recency bias, and he's playing the New Orleans Saints. If I haven't mentioned that yet, yeah, he's awesome, and I don't see a reason not to like Bucky here. He'll be a cash game staple as well. And then after that, if you either go up high with a guy like Bijan Robinson in the nut matchup versus the Carolina Panthers, who are allowing the most points per game to the position, Falcons also need to win this game, and I think they can do it on the back of Bijan. Or if you go down low, a guy like Blake Corum, Will Shipley, or Kenneth Gainwell, whoever gets the burn, we'll probably figure that out by Sunday, is also an option. In tournaments, I like Jonathan Taylor a lot last week, played on my main FanDuel lineup, and while it was a slow start for the Indianapolis Colts, Taylor ended up having a huge game. Great spot here versus Jacksonville. They're 5-point favorites at home. I like Jonathan Taylor once again. Zach Charbonnet, always going to be in play with no Kenneth Walker. They're also 6.5-point favorites versus the Rams with them resting key starters. Then after that, Rico Dowdle, Tony Pollard just kind of meh plays. And Tony Pollard does have some incentives this week, and they are favored versus Houston, which would pretty much indicate that the Texans will be resting some guys this weekend. And then Rico Dowdle, he just gets volume. I'm not sure who the quarterback's going to be yet, so that could obviously take a hit to the offense if it's a guy like Trey Lance. But he is on the list just because he's going to get volume at a fair price point. All right, back to the lineup here. Since I am not going the Buccaneers passing attack, which I would like to try to fit in Mike Evans if possible, I think he's a smash play this week. But I'm going to prioritize a couple of other pieces first. But since I don't have Baker, I'm going to try to get Bucky Irving in because I got to soak up some of these Tampa Bay points somehow. So we'll play Bucky, and then I got to save some money because there's some more expensive pieces I want later down on the road. I believe he's $4,700. Yeah, Michael Carter. And that gives us a $5,200. And I know with Bo Nix, I am playing Cortland Sutton. I would guess I wouldn't hate playing Marvin Mims as well. It feels a little bit like I'm point chasing, but he does have a bit of an expanded role, and he has looked good, obviously. But we'll move on to wide receiver, and then we'll build from there. And of course, always a bit of a long list here, but we try to correlate this as best as possible to our quarterbacks. Like if we have Bo Nix, I'm looking right at guys like Cortland Sutton, $6,400. I think he's a great play this week. I'm also looking at Marvin Mims at $4,600. He has huge play upside. If we are looking at cash games specifically, where we're not necessarily looking at stacking our lineups much, Mike Evans, if you're spending top dollar, he is the guy to get to. On FanDuel, we have other options. We have Jordan Addison, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson to pick from. I love that. But since this is centered around DraftKings mainly, Mike Evans would be the top spend up here. He has one of the highest yardage props I've seen from a wide receiver all season long. He's at 100.5. That opened up at 91.5. So I do think it's a bit steamed up. And my projections currently have him at 91. So it would suggest to take the under on that. But that does feel pretty scary to do because, I mean, everyone's going to be on Mike Evans. Baker Mayfield said if they're winning, he's getting Mike Evans his 1,000-yard record. He also has some more incentives. But yeah, Mike Evans is getting the ball. We'll just see how much it ends up being. But I would be extremely shocked if he does not get that, 85, 86 yards he needs to get his threshold. If you're not spending top dollar, or if you are, need some mid-range plays. Drake London, Cortland Sutton, Adam Thielen, JSN all look extremely viable to me. If you are spending all the way down, we do have some rando plays, which a lot of this is guesstimation, guys. So, I mean, some of these guys, I mean, you think they might be on the field because teams are resting starters, but we don't really know what's going to happen. Like on KC, we have guys like Justin Ross. I'm not going to put everybody on here, but I just wanted to highlight a couple. Nico Remigio, I don't know. He sounds Italian. Nick, I don't know how you say his name. Whatever. But $3,000, he should be on the field. I got him projected for like 7-9 points. He's $3K flat. I don't know. Whatever. Jordan Whittington, Tutu Atwell, Tyler Johnson, whatever Rams wide receiver. I think one of them will at least be somewhat viable. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be under center, so obviously that's a big hit, but no Puka, no Cooper Kupp. I mean, someone's got to run routes out there. Tutu Atwell does project the best currently. And that's probably it. Well, the Colts wide receivers, if Joe Flacco's under center, which it looks like that's going to be the case once again, Michael Pittman and Josh Downs are going to be viable. You can also look at Alec Pierce. Josh Downs, really bad game, which was surprising from Joe Flacco. I believe Alec Pierce played on 91% of the snaps. Josh Downs was in the 60s, which is a little bit concerning, but this is a great spot versus Jacksonville. And I mean, if you're playing Joe Flacco, I like any of the wide receivers with him, but Michael Pittman is probably my number one as of right now. And with the Seattle Seahawks, it looks like they're going to be giving it a go here. And with Rams resting key starters, Geno Smith stacks with guys like JSN or DK Metcalf, not that expensive whatsoever. And if you do want to run it back, obviously there's some free options over in LA. All right, back to the bill. We got to get a couple of wide receivers. Since I have Bo Nix, let's get some pass catchers with them. I like Cortland Sutton at $6,400. We can double stack if we want. We do have Marvin Mims down here, I believe at $4,600 if you're looking at his usage recently. 4, 4, 5, 8 targets, pretty much carved out the wide receiver 2 role in that offense. I mean, we don't have to double stack with Bo Nix. He does have a little bit of rushing upside, but let's just do it anyway. And if you wanted to get crazy, we could run it back with a guy like Remigio, however you say his name. I'm probably screwing up. Remigo, I don't know. Remigio sounds more fun. He's $3K flat, and that would give us some really nice salary to work with because you have to keep in mind we have a cheap defense, we have a cheap tight end. Although KC does have a cheap tight end we could use as well, which might be better suited because maybe we could fit in a guy like Mike Evans at wide receiver there. So move on to tight end, talk a little bit of defense, and then we'll finish this lineup out. And not really much to talk about here. Obviously, there's probably going to be some randoms that pop up a little bit, but if you are just absolutely punting, Peyton Hendershot, I mean, he should be on the field. I can't imagine. Obviously, Travis Kelce's not going to play. Can't imagine Noah Gray gets much burn here. Basically a full-time player over there anyway, so it should be Peyton Hendershot. And I mean, at $2,500, I mean, whatever. Carson Wentz, some practice squad quarterback. I'm sure they can get him the ball, and he's free. Payne Durham with no Cade Otton. He'll be in play once again. And if you're spending up Brock Bowers, I'm sure Las Vegas has one strategy this week, and it's just feed Brock Bowers the ball. Trey McBride got into the end zone last week, which was nice. Huge game versus the Rams. And then Zach Ertz, I don't mind him as a GBP option if I am playing a guy like Jaden Daniels this week. All right, let's finish off this lineup. I'm sure it's going to look horrible, but it's week 18, guys. I mean, we're not really sure what's going on. So let's just play the punt tight end over in KC. Let's hope he gets the run. Well, throwing a cheap defense, I'm not exactly sure which one I want to roll with here. We could go with, I mean, Green Bay still has a pretty decent implied team total. Don't really want to go with the Cowboys, Jaguars. None of these really look that appealing. I guess maybe the Patriots with the Buffalo Bills resting starters. They're playing at home. I think the Bills only have a 19.5, 20-point implied team total, which is a lot lower than normal. So I think we could probably get away with the Patriots this week, just save some money. And at $75.50, I think we can play Mike Evans. So we might not have Baker Mayfield, but we're still getting exposure to the main points of the Tampa Bay team with a 30-point implied team total because we still have $7,100 left in flex, so we can pretty much play whoever we want. If we want to play Malik Neighbors, I like him a lot. Obviously, James Cook isn't going to play. McConkey, like several good options here. If you didn't want to completely punt tight end, I still think we can maybe spend up a little bit, and I don't think it'll absolutely kill us. If we wanted to play Trey McBride, that leaves us with $3,100. You could go with one of those other punt wide receivers that we have this week. But overall, I think there's several ways you can go, and we can pretty much get the guys we want. So the premise of this lineup is this Buccaneers KC stack, which sounds horrible to say because KC's rushing the starters. But we have Bo Nix double stack with Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims. We're running it back with Peyton Hendershot. That's how you know it's week 18. We have Bucky Irving and Mike Evans soaking up those Tampa Bay points. Michael Carter's just the free square running back this week. Patriots defense, and use your imagination at flex. And as per usual, we'll head over to the optimizer here and try to see what it spits out. Now, I was debating on even doing it this week because it's still Friday and I'm still doing a lot of guesswork. But we'll just see what it spits out, I guess. So we'll go over to the randomness here. We could add more just because I don't really know, but we'll keep it at 10 this week. We are going to okay with that. And then we're going to add some quick stack settings here, stack QB. Now, it's going to also do it for guys like Josh Dobbs and rushing quarterbacks because I'm not taking the time to cut these guys out because I'm just trying to show you an example. But just know that you don't have to get a pairing option with those kind of guys this weekend. Like I said, we could specify the teams. We could exclude certain teams. We could force a run back, but I'm not going to do that as of right now. So we'll run our 20 max here, and I will see you guys in a second. And it looks like we got at the build here, and I am seeing a lot of Baker Mayfield. I'm seeing some Kyler Murray mixed in as well. So let's look at the player usage here. Even with some randomness added on. Michael Carter, 100% of lineups. Courtland Sutton, that's a lot of Houston Texans. Michael Pittman, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Josh Downs, McBride, and a good amount of Kyler Murray. So I'm thinking maybe I should up my interest in him a little bit. I mean, just have rushing upside. I guess it's mainly just been kind of me having a lot more interest in a guy like Josh Dobbs. But if we have the money for it, Kyler Murray definitely doesn't look that bad. If we head over to the teams here, ton of Tampa, ton of Arizona, ton of Indianapolis, which, that makes sense to me. Arizona and San Francisco getting jammed in pretty much everywhere because of guys like Josh Dobbs, Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, Michael Carter, of course. But keep in mind that it is still early in the week, and we're going to get a lot of news that'll probably drop on Sunday for guys starting, guys sitting, which can definitely change things around. But with that being said, that's all I got for this week's video. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, or even if you didn't, make sure you hit a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you all next time.